All right, everybody see themselves?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, we are actually live now. All right, good morning and welcome to Clayton County Magistrate Court misdemeanor preliminary hearing. I'm going to go ahead and call the calendar. If everyone who is representing the individuals could announce. The state versus Chavez Duran.
Good morning, Your Honor. Thomas Florio for Mr. Ricardo Duran Chavez. That'll be a hearing this morning.
Okay. State versus Andy Long.
Good morning, Your Honor. This is Attorney George Graves with Lister and Holt. I've hadn't had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Luong, so if we could briefly conference.
Okay. And is Mr. Long there? Do we have Mr. Long there in the does he need an interpreter? We have a Vietnamese interpreter in the call. He does need an interpreter? All right, very, very good. Dietrich McDougall.
Good morning, Judge. This is Attorney Jim Sullivan. I'm the attorney for Mr. McDougall.
Yes, sir.
Trying to resolve my video, and can you invite me again to join the meeting? And I think my video might show up this time around. Do you have that access?
I did. I just did that.
Oh, okay. Yes. Let me. I'm join. Okay. Can everyone see me now?
No, sir. Mr. Sullivan, do you check the bottom left
Oh yes.
screen to see if you're there's a camera logo and there'll be a red bar if
There you are. There he is.
Oh, I'm sorry. You all have to see me. But here I am. Well, we would like a hearing, Judge.
You're here twice, but we can't see you. Is anyone seeing him? I don't see him. I see him in two boxes because he must have left the meeting and re-invited himself to the meeting.
Yes, sir, I don't see him either.
Oh, goodness, I just saw myself, and now what's going on?
Well, it's nice that you're seeing yourself. No, there you are. There you are.
There I am.
Okay, so I'm going to take you out of one of these boxes. Is that okay?
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay, I'm removing you up. Okay, there we are. All right, very, very good. So, Mr. Sullivan, you were saying that you wanted to pre-try the case with the state?
I've had an opportunity to do that with Attorney Lewis, and I just need a couple minutes to explain my position to the court about why I don't think there should be any charges against Mr. McDougall. They should be dropped.
And so are you saying that you want a hearing?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Judge.
Okay. All right, very, very good. State versus Trudy Ann Murray. That case was continued to today. Looks like Judge George continued that case.
Yes, Your Honor. I'm sorry, my mic was on mute. Yes, Your Honor. Attorney Alway, on behalf of Ms. Murray, I need an opportunity to speak with Ms. Murray.
Okay.
There may need to be an eval done, but that's why I wanted to speak with her one last time.
Okay, very good. All right. State versus Brandon Parker.
Your Honor, I need to conference with him as well.
Okay. State versus Isaiah Smith.
Your Honor, I need to conference with the state on that one.
Want to have a pretrial?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And then the last case I have is the state versus Anayeli Pelcastre.
Your Honor, that's Mr. Coleman's client.
Mr. Coleman. Mr. Coleman, okay, he's not. Mr. Coleman, can you hear us?
Your Honor, I'll shoot him a quick text.
It looks like he's doing something himself. Maybe sending an email to someone or something like that. But I can't hear him. Okay, that's all that I have on today's calendar. Is there anyone that I don't have on the calendar that may have been continued? Okay, so let's do this, because is it possible, so Lewis, you're the only person here from Lister and Holt, is that correct?
Ma'am?
Who else is here from Lister and Holt?
I am, Your Honor, George Graves.
Okay, so I'm trying to think how we can divide this. I don't know that we can because we're all on one call. So we probably, because typically what I would say is let's go ahead and start pre-trying with one attorney and then have the other attorney start the hearings. But since we're all in one place together, we're not going to be able to do that. So what are the suggestions on how to proceed?
Your Honor, I know that Mr. Sullivan is ready. And so we may be able to proceed with he and Mr. Mr. Florio, I think mentioned, never mind, that he needed to talk as well.
No. I'm ready. I'm ready to have the hearing. It'll take.
You ready for that?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead and
I'm good to
have,
go.
let's have the hearing. And Mr. Duran.
Your Honor, I am a bit concerned about, since we're used to doing this, following along simultaneously in the courtroom, how exactly I'll do that without talking over the speakers.
Yikes. Yikes.
Is there
yikes.
do you all have a suggestion for how to handle that appropriately?
I think we're going to have to go slowly and just give you an opportunity to translate every time we say something. That's the only thing I can think of.
All right.
Okay. And so, Mr. Florio, your client needs Mr. Duran. Let's bring Mr. Duran up to the podium. If we Okay, Ms. Jartu, I'm going to go ahead and swear you in first. Do you swear that you will accurately translate these proceedings from English to Spanish and Spanish to English to the best of your skills, knowledge, and ability?
I do.
And then let's see, why don't you help me swear in? Well, he's not going to, I don't know that he's going to testify. And then where are your witnesses?
Your Honor, I was told by Ms. Simmons that the court would invite them one by one as we needed them for hearings.
Okay.
I supplied their county email addresses. Chief Investigator Lois Woods, who's on the call, she's standing by to help us coordinate so that you're not asking for witnesses and they're doing something else. Does Your Honor need me to resend any of that information?
Let me ask Ms. Simons, do you have, because let's
I have all of their emails. If you want me to invite them now, I can.
okay, so we have Duran is going to be our first hearing.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Yes.
Yes, I just got a text from the officer, and he says that he is available on the Zoom app, so he's ready.
And this is, which officer is this?
This is Officer Alvarado.
Okay.
Is
And
this
he's
is this the Duran Chavez case?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it's Officer Alvarado.
Okay, perfect. And then our second hearing is going to be McDougal.
I think that's Officer Bowman.
It is, I'm working on it.
Okay. So let's do these two hearings first. Attorney Coleman, does anyone know?
I received a text back from him, Your Honor. He's trying to get on with his computer is what he texted back. He's going to try his computer.
Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and start. Well, let's wait for Officer Alvarado as soon as he's here. Okay, I see Mr. Coleman's trying to come back in the meeting. Mr. Coleman, Attorney Coleman.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning. Well, we can hear you now. We can't see you, but we saw you before, so we'll just remember what you look like, and now, at least now we can.
Go ahead, Your Honor.
Sir, what is your announcement on your case, Pellicastre?
We'd like to have a preliminary hearing, Your Honor. There I am.
Okay.
I'm there.
There you are. Very good.
Hey,
All right, good. Okay, so those are 3 hearings. So your hearing will be 3rd.
thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Good to finally see you.
Which officer is that, Ms. Lewis, on Pellicastre?
And if I could have one brief moment, Your Honor. And I'm gonna attempt to pronounce it. I think it's Papa Yeva.
That's his first name is Malatea. Malatea.
Malatea.
Okay. Okay, very good. So Officer Alvarado, I don't see him anywhere around, not waiting to come into the meeting. As soon as he's in the meeting, we'll kind of start this hearing with Mr. Duran.
Your Honor, I think he's using the app on his phone. Should he use his phone or because initially I was told to tell them to put the app on their phone.
Oh, it's okay, as long as he has a camera. Other officers have used their phones in their car, and it's worked perfectly fine. But what happens is at the top of my screen, I'll see that a person is trying to join the meeting, and I'll let them into the meeting, but I don't see that there's anyone new trying to come into the meeting. So we're going to wait for Officer Alvarado.
And thank you again for your patience.
They don't see him.
Your Honor, while we're waiting on that officer, may I make a note and announcement to Your Honor with respect to a witness?
Absolutely.
On Isaiah Smith, we are going to actually need the victim in that case. I've spoken with her this morning, so she is aware that we would be calling her. I do have her email address that I can provide for.
And actually, so we need to bring her into this call is what you're saying.
Yes, ma'am, because she will need to testify as a witness. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so at some point what we can do is invite her, and I guess Ms. Simons can do that as well from where she is.
And I can send Ms. Simons her email address.
Okay, that'd be perfect.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Your Honor, before
Yes,
the court does call the alleged victim in that case, I would like an opportunity to speak with Mr. Smith.
Okay.
Okay, so I hear you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just send it to Simons and she can just hold off, I guess, until we know more.
Yes,
ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Your Honor, he said he needed the meeting ID. I told him to check his email. So he should be up shortly.
Okay. And you sent the email to him, is that correct, Ms. Woods? Investigator Woods?
I sent the email, Judge.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Ms. Simons. Here it is. Perfect. Officer Alvarado is here. Let's see. Officer Alvarado,
Yes, ma'am.
you can hear us. We can't see you, but that is, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out this out.
What you do is if you go down to the very bottom of the whole, like almost like the television screen, go to the bottom left, there's a microphone,
There.
and then there's a stop video. Oh, there you are. Okay,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
you're
Morning.
quick study. I was still explaining and you were already here. Very good. All right, let me swear you in, sir. Do you swear from the information you give, any testimony you provide in the matter of the state versus Ricardo Duran Chavez is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so you God?
I swear.
Okay, very, very good. All right. So Ms. Lewis and Officer Alvarado, we're going a little slowly because the interpreter has to interpret everything that we're saying to Mr. Duran.
Okay.
All right.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Lewis.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Alvarado, can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Oficial Alvarado, si usted puede decir su nombre completo y deletréalo para que conste en el acta.
I'm Officer Alvarado. My entire name you want me to spell?
Yes.
I
Or just say your first name and spell your last.
My name is William Alvarado, last name Alvarado.
Soy el oficial William Alvarado, el apellido se deletrea Alvarado.
And Officer Alvarado, where do you currently work?
Y oficial Alvarado, ¿dónde es que está trabajando actualmente?
I work for the Clayton County Police Department.
Trabajo para la policía del condado de Clayton.
And were you working there on February 24th of this year?
¿Trabaja usted ahí el 24 de febrero del año presente? Correcto.
And can you repeat your answer? She was translating.
Yes.
Que sí.
And on that date, did you have the occasion to respond to a resident 7735 apartment 37 Ontario Boulevard?
Y en esta fecha tuvo usted la ocasión de acudir al domicilio en el 7725 apartamento 37 de la Tara Boulevard?
Correct.
Correcto.
And do you know what county and state that is in?
¿Sabe en qué condado y en qué estado está ubicado?
That's located in the Clayton County.
Está ubicado en el condado de Clayton.
And on that date, were you investigating a potential domestic disturbance?
Y en esa fecha, ¿estaba usted investigando un posible disturbio doméstico?
That's correct.
Correcto.
And during the course of that investigation, did you come into contact with a Ricardo Duran Chavez?
Y durante el transcurso de tal investigación, ¿tuvo usted contacto con un tal Ricardo Duran Chavez?
That's correct.
Correcto.
And I know we are not in a courtroom, but present in this virtual hearing, do you see that individual today?
Yo sé que no estamos dentro de sala de juicio, pero durante esta audiencia virtual hoy, usted lo ve aquí presente.
I'm not able to see it.
No lo puedo
Judge,
ver.
I'll stipulate that it's my client, Ricardo Duran Chavez, and I'll stipulate it's the gentleman in the orange jumpsuit.
Su señoría, estipulo que sí es mi cliente, Ricardo Durán Chávez, y es el señor que está vestido del mono anaranjado.
Thank you, Mr. Florio.
Gracias, licenciado Florio.
And Officer Alvarado, you have the opportunity to speak to two individuals in reference to your investigation.
Y oficial Alvarado, tú usted la oportunidad de hablar con dos personas acerca de su investigación.
Correct.
Correcto.
And did they indicate that this altercation became physical at some
Y
point?
ellos indicaron
Objection.
que en algún momento el altercado se puso físico. Me opongo.
Objection leading.
Presión, la pregunta insinúa la respuesta. ¿Y cómo responde licenciada?
It wasn't leading. I asked, did they have the occasion to advise whether it turned physical?
No insinúa la respuesta, solamente pregunté si ellos informaron que el altercado se puso físico.
Attorney Florio, response?
I'll rest on the objection.
All right, I'm gonna overrule your objection.
Yo niego la protesta.
And please answer that question, Mr. Officer Alvarado.
Yes, they did indicate that the altercation turned physical.
Si usted puede contestar, oficial Alvarado, sí, ellos sí me indicaron que el altercado se volvió físico.
And can you provide to us those details about how the altercation became physical through your investigation?
Señor oficial, si nos puede dar los detalles sobre cómo fue que se puso físico el altercado. If the interpreter may interrupt.
Yes, ma'am.
It seems that there is some landscaping going on at this very moment. If you would allow me to shut another door and maybe it'll be more quiet.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Just half a second, 1 second.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
I apologize.
Thank you.
And Madam Interpreter, did we get that last question?
I think I interpreted if the officer could advise how the two persons advised that the altercation became physical.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yes, that was the last question. Yes.
Okay.
Officer Alvarado, can you answer that question for me, please?
Yeah. According to the victim, Ms. Cortez, she stated that the defendant took her phone away, put it in his pocket, and she went towards him to take the phone. They are struggling. Oh, I'm sorry.
Según la víctima, la señora Cortés, con quien hablé, el acusado le quitó el teléfono y se lo metió a su bolsillo. Entonces ella se le acercó y empezaron a forcejar.
Okay, and then
during that struggle,
I asked, and then what happened?
During that struggle, the defendant pushed her and then punched her in the face, in the area of the mouth, with a closed fist, causing injuries in the lower left side.
Okay, let's pause and let the interpreter, sorry.
Y luego, ¿qué sucedió, señor oficial? Durante el forcejeo, el acusado la empujó y le pegó un puñetazo en la cara, en el área de la boca, causando lesiones en el labio inferior del lado izquierdo.
And Officer Alvarado, in your interaction with this individual, were you able to see any visible injuries for yourself?
Señor oficial, en su encuentro con la señora, ¿pudo usted ver alguna lesión aparente?
That's correct. I was able to observe injury on the lower left side lip. I also observed blood in her shirt and in the floor of the living room area that indicate and match the narrative of the incident.
Okay. Okay.
Sí, licenciada, yo sí observé lesiones en el labio inferior del lado izquierdo y también sangre en la camisa y en el piso de la sala, que aparece también en la narrativa del informe policial.
Okay. And and what's the individual's name that you observed the blood in her
¿Y
shirt? On his
cómo
pants?
cómo se llama la persona donde usted observó la sangre en la camisa?
Cortez, Yvette.
Cortes Yvette.
Okay. And did she advise anything else about the physical aspect of this altercation?
¿Y ella informó algo más acerca del aspecto físico del altercado, señor?
They stated that in the past they'd have altercation. I also respond to a previous call in the same location for the same situation, a verbal altercation previously.
Ella sí informó que habían altercados en el pasado. Yo también había respondido a un altercado en una situación similar, un altercado verbal.
Now, I know that you mentioned also that you made contact with the defendant, Mr. Duran Chavez. Were you able to observe any injuries on him?
Yo sé que usted mencionó que había tenido contacto con el señor acusado, el señor Durán Chávez. ¿Pudo usted observar alguna lesión en su persona de él?
I was unable to observe any visible injuries on the defendant.
Yo no pude observar ninguna lesión visible en el acusado.
And did he speak with you with regarding to this incident?
¿Y él habló con usted con respecto al incidente? Correcto.
Okay. And what did he advise?
¿Y qué fue lo que él le informó, señor?
He did stated that he took his girlfriend, his living girlfriend, Miss Cortez, phone, and they start struggling. He started struggling with Miss Cortez to get the phone. She was trying to get the phone when she got hurt. He then advised that. Oh, I'm sorry.
Él sí informó que él le quitó el teléfono a la señora Chávez, su novia que vivía con él, que ella estaba tratando de agarrar el teléfono y estaban forcejeando.
Okay. And just for clarity, whose phone was this?
If the interpreter may interrupt one moment, the interpreter left out a part, and that's when she got hurt. Go ahead.
And can you advise, just for clarity, whose phone this was?
Y para clarificar, ¿puede informarnos a quién le pertenece el teléfono?
The phone belonged to the victim.
El teléfono pertenece a la víctima.
Last left off in your testimony, you said, and that's how she got hurt. Can you elaborate on that?
Cuando la última parte de su testimonio usted mencionó que había dicho y así fue que ella se lastimó. ¿Puede usted dar más detalles?
Yeah, that's what all the defendant stated, that she got hurt and then he locked himself in a room and called the police to.
Eso fue lo único que el señor acusado me dijo, que ya se había lastimado y luego él se encerró bajo la llave en el cuarto y llamaron a la policía.
And were you able to ascertain what their relationship was at that time?
¿Y llegó usted a determinar cuál fue la relación que ellos tenían en el momento?
Yeah, girlfriend and boyfriend.
Sí, son novios.
And were you aware of whether or not they lived together?
I'm sorry, the interpreter didn't hear the last part of your question.
And I asked him, and was he aware of whether or not they lived together?
¿Y sabe usted si ellos vivían juntos?
Yeah, they both stated that they live together.
Sí, ambos dijeron que vivían juntos.
And I may have asked, I just want to make sure, the incident occurred in what county?
Y tal vez ya le pregunté, solamente me quiero asegurar, ¿el incidente ocurrió en cuál condado?
The incident take place in Clayton County.
Se llevó lugar en el condado de Clayton.
All right, Ms. Lewis.
I don't have any further questions, Your Honor, of this witness.
All right, great. Mr. Attorney Florio Cross.
No tengo más preguntas
Thank you, Your
para
Honor.
este testigo. Licenciado Florio puede contrainterrogar. Gracias.
Officer Alvarado, when you got to the home, who was located inside the home?
Oficial Alvarado, cuando usted llegó a la casa, ¿quién estaba dentro de la casa?
The victim.
La víctima.
And anyone else?
¿Y había alguien más?
It was some neighbors that came when they saw the police, but I don't recall the names.
Unos vecinos que llegaron al ver a la policía, pero no me acuerdo de sus nombres.
Was Mr. Duran Chavez located inside the home when you arrived?
¿Y el señor Durán Chávez estaba dentro de la casa cuando usted llegó?
No, he was standing outside.
No, él estaba parado afuera.
And independent of Mr. Duran Chavez and Ms. Cortez, were there any other witnesses to what you allege occurred?
Y aparte del señor Durán Chávez y la señora Cortés, ¿había más testigos que presenciaron lo que usted escuchó o vio?
No.
No.
Okay. All right. And you'd agree with me that Mr. Duran Chavez was the one who called 911, correct?
Y estaría usted de acuerdo conmigo que fue el señor Durán Chávez que marcó al 911, ¿correcto?
That's correct.
Correcto.
And are you familiar with what the content of that 911 call was? Why that 911 call was made?
¿Y usted está familiarizado con el contenido de la llamada a 911, de por qué se hizo la llamada a 911?
It was in relation to a domestic disturbance.
Tenía que ver con un disturbio doméstico.
And you'd agree with me that based upon what Ms. Cortez said, Mr. Duran Chavez had given her phone back. Is that correct?
Yes.
Y usted estaría de acuerdo conmigo que basándose en lo que dijo el señor Durán Chávez, el señor Durán le devolvió su teléfono, ¿correcto? Sí.
Did he respond? I'm sorry, I didn't hear if he did.
Yes. He did return the phone to her.
Que sí, él sí le devolvió el teléfono a ella.
Okay. You'd agree with me that Ms. Cortez did not call 911. Is that correct?
Y usted está de acuerdo conmigo que no fue la señora Cortés la que marcó a 911, ¿correcto?
Correct.
Correcto.
Okay. You'd agree with me that according to Ms. Cortez, Mr. Duran Chavez punched her in the mouth, and then he locked himself in a bedroom, and he then called 911. Is that correct?
¿Estaría usted de acuerdo conmigo que el señor Durán Chávez le pegó un puñetazo en la boca y luego él fue a encerrarse en el cuarto y fue él el que marcó a la policía? ¿Correcto?
Correct.
Correct.
Did you ask Ms. Cortez to explain why he would lock himself in a bedroom and why he would call 911 if he had been the primary aggressor and punched her in the mouth?
Usted le pidió a la señora Chávez que le explicara. I'm sorry. Could you please repeat that question?
Right. Did you ask Ms. Cortez to explain why if she knew why he would lock himself in a bedroom and why he would call 911 if she alleged that he was the primary aggressor and had punched her in the mouth?
Que si usted le pidió a la señora Chávez que le explicara por qué fue que él mismo se encerró en el cuarto y fue él el que marcó a 911 si él era el agresor principal.
I don't recall asking her about that.
No recuerdo haberle preguntado sobre esto.
You testified earlier as to a prior domestic dispute which you had responded to. Is that correct?
Usted declaró anteriormente sobre un disturbio doméstico anterior al cual usted respondió, ¿correcto? Correcto.
And you'd agree with me at that time there was no allegation that Mr. Duran Chavez had done any sort of physical harm to Ms. Cortez, correct?
Y usted estaría de acuerdo conmigo que en aquel entonces no salió ninguna alegación de que el señor Durán Chávez había causado algún daño físico a la señora Chávez en esa ocasión, ¿correcto? Sí, es correcto.
And you'd agree with me that you did not arrest Mr. Duran Chavez and charge him with any crimes at that time. Is that correct?
Y estaría usted de acuerdo conmigo que usted no detuvo al señor Durán Chávez ni le acusó de ningún delito en aquel entonces, ¿correcto?
Correct.
Correcto.
Okay. You'd agree with me that Mr. Duran Chavez never made any admission to you that he had struck Ms. Cortez in the mouth. Is that correct?
¿Estaría usted de acuerdo conmigo que el señor Durán Chávez nunca reconoció ante usted que él fue el que le pegó un puñetazo en la boca, correcto?
No, he just stated that she got hurt, but he didn't indicate how.
No, él solamente dijo que ella se lastimó, pero él no indicó cómo.
Did you have body cam that day?
¿Y usted tenía la cámara en su uniforme ese día?
Correct.
Correcto.
And was your body cam in proper working order?
¿Su cámara estaba funcionando correctamente?
That's correct.
Correcto.
And was this incident fully recorded on your body cam?
Entonces, ¿el incidente quedó completamente grabado por su cámara?
Yes.
Sí.
Were there any other officers that were a part of this investigation?
¿Había más oficiales que participaron en esta investigación?
It was Officer Jay Baker was with me at that night.
El oficial Jay Baker estaba conmigo aquella noche.
Did you talk with the neighbors about this incident?
¿Habló usted con los vecinos acerca del incidente?
No, since they didn't witness the incident, I didn't interview any of them.
No, como ellos no presenciaron el incidente, yo no entrevisté a ninguno de ellos.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
No tengo más preguntas en ese momento, su señoría.
Okay, Ms. Lewis, do you have any redirect?
No, you're
Licenciada Lewis, ¿más preguntas?
addressed.
Okay,
No,
state
el estado
rests.
dice presentado. Está bien.
Attorney Floria, are you going to call any witnesses?
Licenciado Floria, ¿quiere llamar testigos?
No evidence on behalf of the defendant, Your Honor.
Ninguna
Okay.
evidencia de parte de la defensa, su señoría.
Okay, argument?
Argumentos.
Your Honor, since the state has the burden in these proceedings, we would request to respond.
Attorney Florio.
Your Honor, we'll submit on the evidence presented.
Bueno, decimos presentado por las pruebas presentadas.
All right, so do you have probable cause? I've got one charge of battery.
Bueno, sí, determino que existe
Probable
motivo
cause for
fundado
that charge.
y existe motivo fundado para la sola acusación de agresión física.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Gracias.
All right, thank
Your
you,
Honor,
Attorney Floor. Sir?
That concludes my business. May I be excused, Your Honor?
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you, Your Honor. Y'all have a good
You're
day.
welcome. Thank you.
Your Honor, may we excuse Officer Alvarado?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you as well.
Stay safe.
All right, so the next hearing we're going to start. Counsel, are you ready?
Okay, Mr. McDougall, Judge Sullivan, I'm ready, Judge.
All right, and we need Officer Bowman.
Judge, I'm willing to stipulate to the police report and materials that Solicitor Lewis sent to me and say that all that stuff is accurate.
Just for purposes of this hearing, I would like to have something on the record.
As would I, Your Honor.
Okay.
And Chief Woods, if you could check in with us with Officer Bowman.
That's what I'm doing right now.
Okay, I appreciate it. Chief Woods, do you know if, while we wait, there he is.
There he is. All right, Officer Bowman, how are you?
I'm all right, ma'am, and yourself?
Great, doing fine, doing fine. All right, let me go ahead and swear you in. Swear from the information you give, any testimony you provide in the matter of State versus McDougall, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, self you got.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Let's bring Dietrich. Is that Mr. Dietrich McDougall at the stand there at the podium? Okay, very good. All right. Your witness, Ms. Lewis.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Bowman, can you state your name and where you are employed?
Officer Bowman, and I'm employed with the Clayton County Police Department.
And were you so employed on February 21st, 2020?
Yes, ma'am.
And on that date, did you have the occasion to make contact with Mr. McDougal?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And where did you have contact with him?
It was at 8233 Eden Court in Jonesboro, Georgia.
Okay. And is that location in Clayton County, Georgia?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay. And what was your reason for making contact with him?
Well, we received from an anonymous caller about a suspicious vehicle that was parked in the back of her cul-de-sac. All she gave us was that it was blue pickup. So as I arrived on scene on the street, at the beginning of the street, I did see a blue pickup truck parked in the back of the cul-de-sac. As I approached the vehicle in my patrol vehicle, I saw both of them. I saw the driver of the vehicle as well as the passenger, which was Mr. Dougal. Both of them were reaching around inside of the vehicle. I couldn't see where they were reaching or what they were reaching for, but I did see that as I approached. So as I approached them, I got out of
Right
my
there, Officer Bowman, because I know you said that you didn't see what they were reaching for, but can you kind of lay out specifically what you did see them doing?
All right. So as I approached their vehicle was parked and I was coming. So it was sort of like a T shape to where their vehicle was long ways to where I could see it was kind of parked up front so I could see the passenger and the driver of the vehicle. I saw the driver of the vehicle reaching around in the center console area, and I also saw the passenger of the vehicle kneeling forward like he was bending over towards the front of the vehicle as well as the side of the vehicle or the center console of the vehicle.
Did you say he did or did not have some movement towards the center console?
He did.
He did. And he being Mr. McDougal or he being the driver?
They both were.
Okay. And I know we're set up a little strange unless Attorney Sullivan identification of Mr. McDougal. I'll ask if he can ID him. Mr. Sullivan, do you have any comment on that?
It was Mr. McDougal, the passenger in the truck.
Okay. Your Honor, is that sufficient stipulation for the court's purposes?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay, so you mentioned that you saw them moving in that center console area. What happened when you made contact with both individuals inside the vehicle?
Initially, I made contact with the driver of the vehicle. I asked him, of course, I told him why I was out there and why we were called. And I asked him what were they doing in the area. And he said that they were just visiting a friend. I asked where did the friend stay. He said they stayed down the street. So as I'm speaking to them, I can smell the odor of marijuana. So I get both of their IDs. And then I step to the rear of the vehicle to call for another unit and to run the tag for the vehicle. Upon doing that, response for the vehicle was that it was active registration, valid insurance. The driver of the vehicle had a valid driver's license and no warrants. However, the passenger, which was Mr. McDougal, or Mr. Dougal, he had active warrant out of Atlanta, Georgia, parole.
Okay. And I know that you mentioned that you smell the odor of marijuana. Did you ever determine where that odor was coming from?
Yes. So after I ran both driver and passenger and the vehicle, I had another unit come. When the other unit came, I got out the passenger. I did pat search him. He did give consent to search his person. Nothing was found on his person. I pat searched the passenger of the vehicle. I pat searched him. Nothing was found on his person. I detained both of them in separate vehicles, and then I did a search of the actual vehicle. And inside of the vehicle, in the center console, was a Burger King cup that had water in it, and inside of that cup that had water in it was a clear plastic bag with a green leafy substance.
Now, in your capacity as a police officer with Clayton County Police Department, have you had the occasion to come into contact with marijuana?
Yes, ma'am, I have.
And through your training and experience, are you aware of the physical characteristics of marijuana?
Yes, ma'am.
That substance located in that Burger King cup in the driver's vehicle, was it consistent with what you know to be marijuana?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so once you located that marijuana, was there any additional marijuana found other than that in the cup that was submerged?
Oh, no, ma'am. That was all the marijuana found.
Okay. And did you speak to these to the driver and the passenger?
Yes, ma'am, I did. They were both separated. I read both of them their rights. The driver of the vehicle said that he didn't know anything about any marijuana.
Okay,
However,
I'm gonna stop you there. I'm gonna stop you to the next. The driver agreed to speak with you.
I'm sorry.
The driver agreed to speak with you.
Yes, ma'am, he did.
And did he indicate whether or not he knew who possessed or owned the marijuana?
No, ma'am. All he said was that he smoked marijuana earlier, but he didn't know about anything.
So meaning he denied having it or he claimed it?
He denied having it.
Okay. And you said that that was all the marijuana that you located in that vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
And you mentioned that the marijuana was submerged in the water of the Burger King cup. Were you able to collect that marijuana?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And did it pose any challenges given that it was submerged in the water?
No, ma'am.
Your Honor, I don't have any further questions of this witness at this time.
All right, cross-examination.
Yes, thank you, Judge. Officer Bowman, I'm Attorney Jim Sullivan. I represent Mr. McDougal. He was the passenger in the pickup truck. I'd like to ask you some questions, okay?
All right.
I can't see you right now. For some reason, I just have a white G on a blue background.
That's Mr. Graves, Mr. Sullivan, right next to him.
There he is. There's Justin's phone. Oh, yeah, and you're okay. Very good. Officer Bowman, did you at any time ever see Mr. McDougal have any marijuana in his hand or on his person during this arrest that you made?
No, sir.
Did Mr. McDougal ever tell you that the marijuana you found in the cup was his?
No, sir.
Did Mr. McDougal give you consent to search him there at the scene?
To search his person or search the vehicle?
Well, it wasn't his vehicle, was it?
No, it was the driver's vehicle.
So did Mr. McDougal give you permission to search him?
Yes.
And did you search him?
Yes, I did.
Did you find any drugs of any kind?
No, sir.
Did you find any drug paraphernalia of any kind?
No, sir.
So you personally are only aware of the residual marijuana in that Burger King cup. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Did Mr. McDougal say it was his Burger King cup?
No, sir.
The pickup truck was owned by the driver, correct? Mr. Justin, what was his last name?
Hall.
Yeah, Justin Hall. Was his pickup truck, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
And he had admitted to you that he'd smoked pot earlier in the day, didn't he?
Yes, sir.
Now, when you say you approached the pickup truck, you saw Mr. McDougal moving around but inside the truck, correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
Yeah, but you could not see what he was doing at all, could you?
No, I just saw him moving around inside of the truck.
And you didn't find any drugs on the passenger side of the truck, under the seat, in the glove compartment, on the floor, correct?
Correct. The only drugs found were in the center console in the Burger King cup.
Why did you arrest Mr. McDougal and charge him with possession of the marijuana and obstruction of evidence?
I read him his rights. He said he didn't want to speak to me. Nobody claimed marijuana. I couldn't just destroy it on the side of the road. Neither one of them claimed it, and I had drugs in the car.
Was it less than an ounce of marijuana?
Yes.
I have no more questions, Judge, but I would like to make an argument. Thank you, Officer Bowman.
Yes,
I
sir.
have a question. I need some clarification from the officer. When you say it was less than an ounce of marijuana, exactly how much was it?
Can I look back at the report?
Please do.
It was 0.8 grams.
How would that translate? How much is that?
It is the only thing I can read is less than an ounce. It was 0.8 grams. So it's not a full gram of weed. When I weighed it on scene, it weighed more because it was wet. But by the time I got to it had dried out and it was at 0.8 grams.
I understand. And so the tampering with evidence charge, I'm going to clarify this for Attorney Coleman. The tampering is tampering with evidence. What is that based on?
It was based off of them putting it in the water. If the marijuana had been sitting in the water, it wouldn't have been as tight as it was. It would have been loose. It would have been hello, I'm sorry, I had a call coming, but I based that off of the fact that if the marijuana had been sitting in the cup for a prolonged period of time, the water would have been discolored. It would have been loose leaves floating in the water, but none of that existed. The water was clear and the marijuanas were still tightly wrapped into the plastic bag it was in.
So it was inside of a bag, inside of the cup of water.
Yes, ma'am. It was inside of a plastic bag, inside of the cup of water.
Okay. All right.
No further questions of Officer Bowman, Judge.
All right, do you have any other witnesses, Ms. Lewis?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Sullivan, do you have any witnesses?
No witnesses, Judge.
All right, argument?
Yes, I believe the state has the right to go first.
Actually, Your Honor, as with the previous hearing, we would like to go second as we have the burden.
Okay. Attorney,
Judge, regarding the tampering with the evidence, Officer Bowman's own testimony just made it clear the evidence was actually secured. It was in a closed, clear plastic baggie. It was not disturbed in any way whatsoever. And the fact that it's in a Burger King cup did not in any way cause that marijuana to be deteriorated. So there, by the officer's own testimony, there was no destruction of evidence. There was no tampering. To the contrary, it was actually preserved. So that charge cannot stand as a matter of fact based on Officer Bowman's testimony and should be dismissed. As to the possession of less than an ounce of marijuana, Officer Bowman's testimony is clear. He has no proof that Mr. McDougal ever physically possessed that marijuana. Mr. McDougal allowed the officer to search him at the scene, and the officer found no drugs, no drug paraphernalia. And when the officer spoke to the co-defendant, Justin Hill, he said, you know, I was smoking pot earlier today. Well, there it is, Judge. That's an admission that that's his marijuana, combined with the fact that it's his pickup truck and the law is clear. The owner of a vehicle is presumed to be in possession of all the contents of the vehicle unless the state can prove otherwise. The state has not made out any case against Mr. McDougal for possessing that marijuana. It's undisputed. He was the passenger. And so there's no legal basis or factual basis for the charge of possession of marijuana to stand against Mr. McDougal. So likewise with the tampering with evidence charge, there's no probable cause to find against Mr. McDougal. So I ask that those charges be dismissed. Thank you, Judge.
1 second, Ms. Lewis. Attorney Sullivan, do you have a copy? You're quoting from a case. Is that case law, or is that some type of the fact that the owner is presumed to be in possession of all contents unless the state can prove otherwise? Is that a particular case that you're citing from?
I don't have the case in front of me, Judge, but in the 30 years I've been doing criminal defense, the person who is driving the vehicle is presumed to be in control of the vehicle and its contents, which includes possession.
And Your Honor, I'll be happy to clarify the ownership presumption with the court. It's not quite the way Mr. Sullivan is presenting it, but I would like the opportunity to clarify that.
All right, let me see. Mr. Sullivan, are you done with your argument?
Yeah, yes, Judge, that's my argument. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Ms. Lewis?
Thank you, Your Honor, for the opportunity to address the court. I will take them in turn as Attorney Sullivan argued. He argued that Officer Bowman's testimony establishes that there was no tampering with evidence. The tampering with evidence is the attempt to interfere with the officer's ability to have access to it. I think even the testimony of Officer Bowman would be grounds to establish obstruction of a law enforcement officer at the level. Even if the court was not inclined to believe the tampering, I think Officer Bowman summarized it quite well when he said that he could tell that this was not just that the marijuana had already previously been sitting in the cup because the water was clear the marijuana was still loosely, and he did indicate that as he was approaching the vehicle, both the current defendant and the driver were moving around, and they both were moving around in the location where the cup would have been in the context. So that in combination showed that the marijuana had been sitting there for a lengthy period of time, and that the movement was based on their observation of the officer approaching the vehicle and their attempts to hide it. So I do think it rises to the level of tampering with evidence, but if the court is not inclined to bind it over on that basis, I do think factually it would support an obstruction, because obviously hiding the marijuana and submerging it in water could be an attempt to alter the smell that marijuana typically has. It certainly would make it less conspicuous than in a more visible area of the vehicle. And the court does have authority pursuant to 24-104. In making its determination, the court should not be bound by the rules of evidence except those with respect to privilege. I'm sorry, I cited to the wrong thing. 17-7-29, court of inquiry may commit the defendant for a different offense than that stated in the warrant if the evidence requires it. And again, that's 17-7-29, Your Honor. I'm sorry, I cited to the wrong section earlier. So even if the court was not inclined to believe that it's tampering, I certainly think that that statute and the evidence support an obstruction charge. As to the possession of marijuana count, the ownership presumption, Your Honor, is not a preclusive law by the court. That is one of the ways the state can prove it. So in a case where the state would want to operate under ownership presumption of a house or a car, there are jury charges that we request of the court get it out to the jury.
Miss Lewis, you're kind of going in and out.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. It may be my internet. I apologize.
Okay.
I'll start over. With the ownership presumption in a jury trial setting, that is one of the ways the state can prove its case. And there's a jury charge that we would request. But even where the owner of the vehicle, because sometimes the driver is not the owner, or the state does not want to utilize the ownership presumption, opens itself up to the companion charge of equal access. The state does not have to utilize the ownership presumption, but it is there should the state choose to go that route. Clearly, in Mr. McDougal's case, that's not the presumption that the state is using. The state is relying on his proximity to the contraband, the fact that the officer observed both he and the driver moving in the direction of where the marijuana was ultimately found. And so the question becomes who possessed it. And possession can be joint. It does not have to be sole. So it could be that they shared it. It could be that one of them had it and the other didn't. And, you know, I understand Mr. Sullivan's position, but the things that he said of his client, the same could be said of Mr. Hall. There wasn't any marijuana found on his person. There was none, did not claim the marijuana. In fact, he denied that the marijuana in the car was his. But we know from common sense that it didn't just appear from the sky. Update. So it is not uncommon in possession cases that both are arrested, as possession could be joint or sole. And I think based on the standard of probable cause, if you believe all the testimony that Officer Bowman has presented as true, there is sufficient probable cause to bound it over to state court to proceed further.
All right, thank you. So based on the testimony that I heard from Officer Bowman, as well as the argument both from the state as well as from Sullivan, defense. I'm not going to find probable cause for tampering with evidence. And I'm not going to rewrite this or redraft this as an instruction. However, I do find probable cause for possession of less than an ounce of marijuana for Mr. McDougal. All right?
Yes,
Judge, would it be appropriate at this time for me to just ask for a signature bond for Mr. McDougal? He's been in jail for 7 weeks. That's more time than he'd serve if he pled guilty. I mean, let the man out on a signature bond and free up space on the jail for someone charged.
What is his bond right now?
I think his bond is 15 on the possession of marijuana, Your Honor, which I think is a reasonable bond, particularly since he does have prior criminal history. There's the 25 on the tampering with evidence, but as Your Honor indicated, you're not binding that over. So I think the only bond issue would be on the misdemeanor marijuana.
At $1,500, I'm gonna leave that bond in place, Mr. Sullivan. And since the $2,500 bond was a higher bond on the tampering with evidence, that's gone now. So your client is left with the $1,500 bond.
Yes, Judge.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. I'm gonna leave the meeting, okay?
You have a good one, Mr. Sullivan. Stay safe.
All right.
And where is our officer? Officer Bowman?
Yes, ma'am.
We're removing you from the meeting, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Here, stay safe.
Thank y'all.
All right, so the next hearing, and we need an interpreter. Ms. Jartu is still with us. Then after this hearing, what we can do is I'll exit the conference, I'll exit the hearing, not the hearing, I'll exit the conference, and I'll let you do some talking, right?
Honor, may I ask a quick question about that?
Absolutely.
You may be a little more versed in that. With it streaming to YouTube, even if we leave, will they still be able to maintain their confidentiality?
Yes, and I thought about that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over to the YouTube channel and I will turn it off.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Of the pre-trial and the confidentiality between the attorneys and the clients, absolutely. And then I'll just start it back when we go into the hearing phase, if we have any more hearings, I should say.
Yes.
All right, so this is Ms. Anayeli Pelcastre
Yeah, Sean, I'm here.
and Attorney Coleman, you're representing, okay?
Sean, thank you very much for having me.
Okay, let me swear in my interpreter again, Ms. Jartu. Do you swear or affirm that you will accurately translate these proceedings from English to Spanish and from Spanish to English to the best of your skills and ability?
I do.
Okay, very, very good. And we have Officer Malatea, who's down here. He's in here. Officer Malatea?
Yes, ma'am.
There you are. Let me swear you in, sir. Do you swear affirm the information you give, any testimony you provide in the matter of the state versus Anayeli Pelcastre is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. All right. Ms. Lewis?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
Officer Malatea, good morning or afternoon, it may be at this point.
Oficial Malatea, buenos días.
Can you please state your name, and you are probably going to need to spell it for the record.
Puede decir su nombre y probablemente sería necesario que nos lo deletrea.
P-A-E-A-V-E-A. Last name Malatea, M-A-L-A-U-T-E-A.
Okay, and I'm gonna just caution you, Officer Malatea, we are having to work with the interpreter. Traditionally, she should be able to speak simultaneously, but because of the hearing, she has to do it one-on-one. So she'll take my questions, translate, and you respond, and then she'll translate what you say.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yes, ma'am.
Officer Malatea, where are you currently employed?
Oficial Malatea, ¿dónde trabaja actualmente?
With the Clayton County Police Department.
Con la policía del condado de Clayton.
And pursuant to your duties with the Clayton County Police Department, did you become involved in investigation this year of a potential domestic violence situation involving Telecastre?
Yes,
Y
ma'am.
conforme a sus deberes, usted participó en una investigación durante este año de un posible disturbio doméstico que tenía que ver con la señora Belcastre. Sí.
And was there the other individual involved? Was his name Luis Hernandez?
Y la otra persona involucrada se llamaba Luis Hernández.
Yes, ma'am.
Sí, señora.
And where did you make contact with Miss Pellicastre and Mr. Hernandez?
¿Dónde fue que usted tuvo contacto con la señora Pelgastre y el señor Hernández?
730 Robert E. Lee Parkway.
Okay.
730 de la Robert E. Lee Parkway.
And what county and state is that location in?
¿En cuál condado y estado queda ubicado ese domicilio?
In Clayton County, Georgia.
En el condado de Clayton, Georgia.
And through your investigation, is this where you learned the incident occurred?
Y a través de su investigación, ahí es donde usted supo que ocurrió el incidente.
Yes, ma'am.
Así es.
Officer Coleman, at this time, I want to ask before I ask the question, are you comfortable stipulating to identity, or do I need to ask the officer to do that?
Please stipulate the identity.
Licenciado Coleman, ¿se siente usted cómodo estipulando sobre la identidad de las personas? Sí, me siento cómodo.
All right, that's noted by the court.
Queda notado por la juez.
And Attorney Coleman. Can you tell us what you learned through your investigation of this domestic?
¿Nos puede comentar lo que usted supo a través de su investigación del incidente?
Yes, we responded out there. We got a call of a domestic disturbance.
Sí, respondimos ahí porque recibimos una llamada sobre un disturbio doméstico.
Mr. Cruz and Hernandez were in the domestic. We responded on team. It took a little bit of understanding what was going on. We gathered a little bit, and I had to get Officer Hernandez.
Officer Malatea, we're having a little difficulty hearing you.
I'm sorry, sir. Did you say Mr. Cruz and Mr. Hernandez? Could you repeat that? What you said?
It's Mr. Cruz, Luis Cruz.
That's better. That's better.
And Miss Hernandez were in the domestic disturbance. They were arguing. And at first, they weren't telling us exactly what was going on. They were just in an argument. I had to get Officer Mendez to respond to gather more in depth of what was going on.
Entonces, el señor Cruz y la señora Hernández estaban en un disturbio doméstico, estaban discutiendo y de hecho no me están diciendo lo que estaba pasando. Tuvo que llamar al oficial Méndez para conseguir más información detallada.
Okay. At some point, you were able to speak to the individuals.
En algún momento usted llegó a hablar con las personas, ¿no?
Yes, ma'am. While we were speaking to them, first they advised it was just a verbal argument. Both families were there. They had actually gotten to an argument. Something happened, and they called their families over.
Sí,
Once their families got there, the families were talking in above each other, and one of them pulled down Miss Hernandez's shirt, revealing a scratch on the base of her neck near her chest area.
Okay, let's hold so
And
the
then
interpreter, Officer Malatea, let's hold so that the interpreter can interpret.
Sí, inicialmente ellos tuvieron un altercado verbal. Ambas familias estaban presentes. Ellos llamaron a sus familias y estaban hablando una persona encima de la otra. Luego alguien bajó el cuello de la camisa a la señora Hernández para enseñar un rasguño que estaba en la parte baja del cuello.
Your Honor, if I could interject real quick.
Yes.
Ms. Palacastre's name is Palacastre Hernandez, and the young man's name is, I think, Cruz Lara. We got to get that straight because that's going to be very important. If I could ask the officer to kind of clarify that.
To clarify which of the parties he's referring to?
Right. The name, if we're going to use Palacastre or Hernandez, but it's the same person, but it's important that we get the names correct.
Did you hear that, Officer Malatea?
Yes, ma'am. Just for clarification, would you rather me refer to her as Pellicastri?
That would be better. Pellicastra. You can use Pellicastra to refer to Mr. Coleman's client, and then Hernandez refers to Luis Hernandez. Is that
I believe Mr. Luis is Laura Cruz.
Okay, so because I'm glad you made that objection or that I guess point of clarification, Mr. Coleman, Attorney Coleman. So Officer Palatea, we have how many parties that are involved in this incident?
Your Honor, would you like me to apprise the defendant of the conversation? Señora, su abogado puso una objeción que el oficial debería de clarificar el uso de los apellidos porque iba entre Pelcastre y Hernández y había una confusión entre si el apellido de una persona es Pelcastre y la otra persona es Hernández, pero parece que el apellido del señor es Cruz Lara. Entonces, la juez dice que sí tenemos que clarificar el uso para identificar correctamente a las personas.
All right, Officer Malateo. Can you just again give us the parties of this, I guess the parties that are involved in this incident?
Señor Malatea, si nos puede explicar quién son las partes involucradas.
Yes, it's going to be Miss Hernandez Pellicastri and Mr. I believe it's Laura Cruz. Is it both their last names?
Es la señora Hernández Pelcastre y el señor Lara Cruz. Son los apellidos de las dos personas.
Attorney Coleman, does that help you?
Licenciado Coleman, ¿eso le ayuda? Sí, está bien.
All right then, Officer Malatea. And Ms. Lewis, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay, so I will use, and I apologize if I've created Mr. Cruz and Ms. Pellicastre Hernandez. I think you indicated that someone revealed some markings on Ms. Pellicastre Hernandez. Did you learn during your investigation how those got there?
Disculpe si yo creé una confusión entre los nombres del señor Pelcastre y el señor Cruz Lara. Creo, señor oficial, que usted dijo que alguien reveló unas marcas en el cuerpo de la señora Pelcastre Hernández. ¿Llegó usted a saber cómo fue que ella sufrió esas marcas?
Yes, ma'am. Her family actually pulled her shirt down, which actually revealed her neck because they were continuing to talk back and forth while we were on the scene.
Sí, su familia de hecho le jaló el cuello de la camisa para enseñar el cuello. Ellos estaban hablando uno encima del otro.
Okay, I guess the question though is, how did they get there? Did you learn it happened?
Pero la pregunta es, ¿cómo es que ella llegó a tener esas marcas? ¿Cómo ocurrieron?
Yes, they were arguing in the living room, and Mr. Laura Cruz stated that Ms. Hernandez Pellicastri slapped him twice after they got into the argument. the argument, then there was a separation of time because they continued to argue. He went to the back. Mr. Lord Cruz went to the back bedroom. Ms. Hernandez Pellicastri followed him to the back bedroom, where another argument ensued. Mr. Lord Cruz advised her to get out several times. Ms. Pellicastri would not get out, so they had another argument in which he grabbed her by the neck and pushed her up against the wall, and she started to hit him.
One moment. Sí, señora. Ellos estaban discutiendo en la sala y el señor Lara Cruz dijo que la señora Hernández Belcastre le pegó 2 cuchetadas. Pasó un lapso de tiempo y seguían discutiendo y el señor Lara Cruz fue a la recámara de atrás. La señora Hernández Belcastre los siguió y seguían discutiendo. El señor Lara Cruz le dijo a ella que se fuera, pero ella no se negó a irse y en eso él la agarró por el cuello y la puso en contra de la pared y ella empezó a pegarle. Go ahead.
I think we established that Ms. Pellicastri Hernandez had injury that you could see. Did you see any injuries on Mr. Cruz?
Creo que quedó establecido que la señora Belcastre tenía heridas que usted pudo ver. ¿Usted llegó a ver alguna herida en el cuerpo del señor Lara Cruz?
Yes, ma'am. He had a scratch, a raised red scratch on his, I believe it was right shoulder that came down towards his right chest.
Sí, señora, él tenía un arañazo como levantadito y enrojecido en el hombro derecho que bajaba hasta el pecho.
And were each party, Pellicastri Hernandez and Mr. Cruz, able to tell you when these injuries took place?
Y cada una de las partes, la señora Hernández Belcastre y el señor Lara Cruz, pudieron indicarle cuándo fue que sucedieron esas heridas.
Yes, ma'am. They actually took place a couple of hours earlier when the argument started.
Sí, de hecho sucedieron unas horas antes cuando comenzó la discusión, el argumento.
And were they able to tell you how?
Y pudieron indicarles cómo.
Yes, ma'am. They actually, the scratches on Mr. Laura Cruz's shoulders were a result of Miss Pellicastri, I guess, fighting and scratching at him whenever he pinned her against the wall by the neck.
Sí, señora, las heridas que tenía el señor Lara Cruz en el hombro eran cuando ella estaba como peleando y arañándolo cuando la tenía por el cuello contra la pared.
And the markings on Miss Pellicastri Hernandez, was she able to tell you all how she obtained them?
Y las marcas que tenía la señora Pellicastri Hernández, ella pudo explicarles cómo fue que consiguió esas marcas.
Yes, ma'am. It's whenever he grabbed her with his left hand, I believe he described it as. That's how she got scratches on her neck area, just above her chest.
Sí, en el momento que él la agarró con la mano izquierda, fue en eso que ella tuvo las marcas, los arañazos en el cuello.
And just for clarification, because I think you mentioned that there seemed to be 2 separate incidents within a very short period of time. Which,
sorry.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
Y para clarificar, porque me parece que usted está describiendo Parece que usted está describiendo que hubo dos incidentes separados en un transcurso de tiempo muy breve.
Yes, ma'am. The time frame was, I believe, roughly about an hour difference from the two incidents, almost an hour difference from her slapping him in the face to
And
a
is,
transition.
Sí, parece que la diferencia de tiempo entre los incidentes eran de como una hora o casi una hora entre cuando ella lo pegó cachetadas en la cara.
and so I think you mentioned this first incident of slapping. Is that why you charged with Pellicastre with simple battery?
Y por el primer incidente, eso fue el motivo de acusar a la señora Pelcastre con agresión
You say what now?
física. Objeción es una pregunta que insinúa la respuesta.
I'd object based on leading them.
Me
All right.
opongo. La
Ms.
pregunta
Lewis,
es
his
insinuante.
objection is that you're leading the witness.
Licenciada, él está oponiendo que usted está insinuando la respuesta al testigo.
I can rephrase, Your Honor.
Puedo
All right, thank you.
reformular la pregunta.
So I
Gracias.
sustain your objection, Mr. Coleman.
Entonces
Attorney
acepto su protesta, licenciado Coleman.
Officer, why did you arrest Ms. Pellicastre for simple battery?
Señor oficial, ¿por qué detuvo a la señora Pelcastre por agresión física simple?
He actually admitted to striking him in the living room prior to the second incident.
De hecho, ella reconoció haberlo pegado en la sala antes del segundo incidente.
And how much time lapsed in between the first and second incident?
¿Cuánto tiempo transcurrió entre el primer
It
y el
was
segundo incidente?
roughly, if I can refer back to my report, I can get you a better, accurate time frame.
Si me puedo
That's fine.
referir al informe, le puedo dar un plazo de tiempo más acertado. Está bien.
It was almost 30 minutes to 40 minutes between the time.
Había un plazo de como 30 a 40 minutos entre los sucesos.
And in this second incident that you said lapsed about 45 minutes, did you charge Mr. Cruz in that incident?
I'm sorry, what was your question?
In the second incident, did you charge Mr. Cruz?
¿Y usted le formuló cargos o acusaciones en contra del señor Cruz por el segundo incidente, señor?
Yes, ma'am. We charged him with the battery for the second incident from him receiving Miss Hernandez Pellicastre receiving the scratches on her neck.
Sí, le formulamos una acusación de agresión física por el segundo incidente cuando la señora Pelcastre recibió las marcas en el cuello.
Okay. And did he make any admissions about that second incident?
¿Y él admitió algo con respecto al segundo incidente?
Yes, ma'am.
Sí, señora.
And did the party have children?
¿Y una de las partes tenía hijos?
Yes, ma'am.
Sí, señora.
And were those children together with each other?
¿Y los niños estaban juntos?
Yes, they were.
Sí, señora. ¿Estuvieron juntos?
And were you aware if they lived together?
¿Y sabe usted si vivían juntos?
Yes, they actually currently live together when the incident occurred.
Sí, de hecho vivían juntos en el momento del incidente.
Your Honor, I don't have any further questions of Officer Malatea at this time.
Su señoría, no tengo más preguntas para el
Your
oficial
witness,
Malatea. ¿Está
Attorney
bien?
Coleman.
Usted lo puede interrogar, licenciado Coleman.
Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you, Ms. Lewis. Good morning, officer. Is it Malatea?
Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Gracias.
I'm hoping everybody is fine and safe in your neck of the woods.
Gracias, buenos días. Ojalá todo el mundo está bien y a salvo en el lado donde está usted, señor oficial.
Um, when you arrived on the scene, who did you interview first?
Cuando usted llegó al lugar de los hechos, señor, ¿a quién entrevistó primero?
Mr. Hernandez, I'm sorry, Ms. Hernandez Telecastro was actually speaking
A
to
la señora Hernández Belcastre.
that was
Okay,
somewhat translated.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. What was your response?
Ms. Hernandez Telecastro was actually speaking to me, but her aunt was somewhat translating what was going on.
La señora Hernández Belcastre estaba hablando conmigo y su tía estaba como medio traduciendo lo que ella me decía.
So, as you were saying earlier, you couldn't really understand what was going on and you couldn't understand her because of the language barrier.
Y usted mencionó anteriormente que realmente no pudo entender lo que estaba pasando o entender a ella por el problema del idioma, ¿no?
Actually, both their family members were already on team and kind of translating back and forth from what they were, what Ms. Hernandez Telecastro was saying, and Mr. Laura Cruz is translating what he was saying.
De hecho, los familiares de ambas partes estaban en el lugar de los hechos y ambos estaban traduciendo lo que decía la señora Hernández Belcastre y lo que decía el señor Cruz Lara.
Okay, and did they explain from what she was saying what happened in the earlier incident?
Y ellos explicaron de lo que ella decía, lo que sucedió en el incidente que pasó más antes.
Yes, sir. They were actually translating what happened earlier. It got to the point that I was mainly listening, gathering information until Officer Mendez could get there. So they were basically translating their stories for me, and then it started going back and forth between them to the point that they said, "Well, fine, look what he did," and pulled her shirt down. And the sister came up, Mr. Laura Cruz's sister came up and pulled his shirt down and said, "Well, look what she did."
Okay.
Sí, de hecho, estaban explicando lo que estaba pasando y yo estaba escuchando y anotando cosas. Y luego empezaron a discutir hasta que ellos dijeron, pero mira lo que él le hizo a ella y enseñaron lo que ella tenía en el cuello. Y luego la hermana del señor Lara Cruz vino y dijo, pero mira lo que ella le hizo a él y enseñó la herida de él.
And those marks were indicative of what happened regarding the second incident, and you indicate that he choked her and she fought him off. Is that correct?
Y esas marcas indican lo que sucedió en el segundo incidente cuando la estaba ahorcando y ella estaba peleando para librarse, ¿no?
Correct. That's why she was charged with the simple battery, due to the fact that the marks that she made on Mr. Laura Cruz on the second incident was what I gathered along with Officer Mendez was related to her swatting Mr. Laura Cruz to get him off of her when he put her against the wall by her neck.
Okay.
Sí, exactamente. Entonces por eso le puse una acusación de agresión física simple por el segundo incidente, de lo que pude entender a través del oficial Méndez cuando ella estaba como manoteando hacia él para quitárselo de encima cuando la tenía contra la pared.
Okay. And did Ms. Palacastri indicate, well, this is kind of hard because she wasn't talking directly to you, but did she indicate where the child was during the second incident?
Y la señora Belgastre le indicó dónde estaba el niño o niña durante el segundo incidente.
I think she mentioned that the child was in the room at the time.
Creo que ella sí mencionó que el niño estaba en el cuarto en el momento.
Okay. In the room or in her arms?
¿En el cuarto o en sus brazos?
To my understanding, what I could understand was in the room.
De lo que yo logré entender, en el cuarto.
Okay. And you indicate that Officer Mendez came onto the scene also, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry, sir. Officer Mendez came on the scene because I didn't hear you.
Just that he indicated that Officer Mendez just came on the scene to assist.
Que usted indicó que el oficial Méndez llegó al lugar de los hechos para ayudar, correcto.
And the officer answered yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, officer, appreciate it. Did you yourself or Officer Mendez in his report, if you, that you know of, indicate that there were any marks on Mr. Cruz's face?
Y usted o el oficial Méndez, si usted se acuerda en el informe, indicó que había marcas en la cara del señor Lara Cruz.
From what I could tell, being on scene, no.
De lo que yo pude ver estando ahí, no.
Okay. So basically, from what you understand, when there was an admission of slapping Mr. Cruz, that was through other parties and the other parties kind of arguing over each other and telling the police what had happened. Is that correct?
Entonces, básicamente, cuando salió la admisión, el reconocimiento de haber pegado, haberle cacheteado al señor Cruz, eso vino a través de otras personas que estaban ahí hablando, que empezaron a hablar una persona encima de la otra.
It wasn't just from other parties. They actually admitted, or I'm sorry, Ms. Peller Cruz actually admitted to striking Ms. Hernandez Pelicastri admitted to striking Mr. Laura Cruz while they were in the den. And when we went to further investigation, she, according to Officer Mendez, whenever he started really asking her about it, she became elusive exactly how and when and what happened in the den.
Pero no, esa información no vino solamente a través de terceros, sino la misma señora Hernández Belcastre reconoció haberle pegado en la sala. De hecho, cuando estaba hablando ella con el oficial Méndez, ella se puso algo elusivo cuando él estaba tratando de enterarse de cómo y dónde exactamente ocurrió.
Did she indicate that she might have been defending herself at the time?
Ella indicó que tal vez se estaba defendiendo en el momento.
No, she didn't indicate that she was trying to defend herself. She just indicated that there was a verbal argument and that they got heated to the point that she struck him, from what I could gather. And I just confirmed it with Officer Mendez that she was not trying to defend herself at the time, that they were in a heated argument about family and the children. And that's whenever she struck him, but she wasn't specific when she was speaking to him.
No era que ella se estaba tratando de defender, sino que ellos tuvieron una discusión verbal que se puso muy acalorado y luego ella le pegó. Y eso es lo que habló con el oficial Méndez. Estaban discutiendo sobre familia y sobre los niños, pero ella realmente no precisó los detalles.
When they said it was a heated argument, how close were the participants? Was Mr. Laura very close to her?
Cuando usted dice que era un argumento, una discusión muy acalorada, ¿qué tan cerca estaban los participantes? ¿El señor Lara Cruz estaba muy cerca de ella?
When we asked where they were standing at or where it happened at in the living room, where he stood and where he gestured her to be was approximately 2 to 3 feet away.
Cuando le preguntamos dónde estaban parados, dónde estaban ellos en la sala, donde él estaba parado, la distancia entre él y donde indicó que ella estaba era una distancia de como de 2 a 3 pies.
They were 3 feet apart.
Tenía una distancia de 3 pies.
Where he gestured, yes. How he gestured it in the living room, he's saying that he said that she was here and I was here and we were
De la
arguing
manera-
and she slapped me twice.
De la manera que él hizo gestos, sí. Él dijo, yo estaba aquí, ella allá, y me cacheteó 2 veces.
So he indicated that, correct?
Entonces fue él el que indicó eso, correcto.
Yes.
Sí.
In Officer Mendez's report, or did the family ever let you know how many times that they had altercations before?
En el informe del oficial Méndez, la familia alguna vez indicó cuántas veces habían tenido altercados antes.
I believe they actually said something that they have this, it happens quite frequently.
Quite frequently?
Creo que ellos dijeron que ocurrió frecuentemente. Frecuentemente. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. It actually says in Officer Mendez's report that Mr. Cruz indicated that happened at least 5 times before. Would that be accurate?
De hecho, aparece en el informe del oficial Méndez que el señor Lara Cruz, que de hecho sucedió por lo menos 5 veces antes. ¿Es correcto?
One second. Is the attorney asking the officer something about what Officer Mendez indicated in his report, or what the officer has personal information based on his familiarity?
Well, I'm sorry, Ron. Let me rephrase. When you say it happened several times before, would you say that they indicated that it was at least 5 times before through your experience on the scene?
Cuando usted dice que pasó varias veces antes, está diciendo que ellos indicaron que por lo menos sucedió 5 veces antes, y eso fue la experiencia que usted tenía estando ahí en la escena del delito.
I couldn't put an exact number on it, but from what I gathered, that they are frequently arguing with each other and possibly fighting with each other.
No puedo darle una cifra exacta, solamente sabía que estaban discutiendo y peleando frecuentemente el uno con el otro.
So last question, is it possible, and from what you saw on the scene, that Ms. Telecastre has had to, or both have had to defend themselves against each other in this type of situation before?
Entonces, mi pregunta es...
Object to speculation.
All right, counselor, response?
So basically it's going to show that there's a pattern and we really don't know who hit who at what time, and they're just explaining that they fight a lot.
I'm going to sustain the state's objection. If you want to rephrase that question, you can rephrase the question.
Okay, let me rephrase. Well, who indicated that this had happened several times?
¿Quién indicó, señor oficial, que eso había pasado varias veces?
Mr. Laura Cruz indicated it first, and Ms. Hernandez Castro, I believe, advised Officer Mendez, along with their family, said that it happens quite frequent. Mr. Laura Cruz actually showed me his car that he says Ms. Hernandez Castro stabbed him with a fork, and it really looks like a fork.
Bueno, el señor Laura Cruz primero dijo que sucede frecuentemente, y luego la señora Hernández Pelcastre le dijo al oficial Méndez, y también la familia de ella le dijo al oficial Méndez que sucede frecuentemente. De hecho, el señor Lara Cruz nos enseñó una cicatriz porque él dice que ella le apuñaló con un tenedor.
I don't know if that last part, Your Honor, if there's an objection that I can make against that last part.
No sé si puedo oponerme a la última parte.
I didn't hear you at all.
Oh, I said I don't know if I can object to what the witness said, but that I don't think that last part is relevant to the.
No sé si puedo oponerme a lo que dijo el testigo, porque no me parece
Are you
pertinente
objecting
lo
or
que
are
él dijo.
you?
I am objecting, Your Honor, to that.
Yo me
to that
opongo.
last part of it.
Yo me opongo a
You're
la última
objecting to the
parte.
latter part of what Officer Malatea said?
I am.
Se
Based
opone a la
on,
última parte,
Based
sí.
on relevance, Your Honor.
based on,
Based on relevance, Your Honor, to this particular proceeding.
Ms.
Me
Lewis,
opongo.
how do you respond?
Your Honor, I think it's relevant. I think Mr. Coleman went down this line of questioning. He specifically asked about the prior difficulties between the two of them. And so I think that Officer Malatea can then respond as to those prior difficulties.
I tend to agree with Ms. Lewis. You did go into a little bit more probing questions in terms of how often had this happened, who said it had happened this frequently and that type of thing. So what you basically did is you gave Officer Malatea an opportunity to go through a door that you yourself opened. So I'm going to agree. I'm going to overrule your objection to his response.
Understood, Your Honor. We have nothing further.
Okay. All right. Do you have any witnesses, any further witnesses, Ms. Lewis?
No, Your Honor.
Okay.
Más testigos,
Mr.
ninguno.
Coleman, do you have any witnesses?
No witnesses, Your Honor.
Testigos,
All right,
licenciado,
argument?
ninguno.
We would have
Argumento,
argument, Your Honor.
Sir? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Coleman.
adelante.
We would just indicate to Your Honor that there is a discrepancy regarding where there's two incidents, and the markings that are clear from this incident, from the second incident, are clear that the families demonstrated and it seemed as though the officers discerned that the markings on the chest were from when Mr. Lara had choked Ms. Pellicastre, and she fought him off to get him from choking him, which any person would do.
Bueno, hay una
One
discrepancia.
second. Right.
Hay dos incidentes y queda claro que las marcas del segundo incidente, según la familia y lo que hablaron con el oficial, fueron resultado de cuando la estaba ahorcando y ella se estaba tratando de quitárselo de encima y por eso tuvo las marcas en el pecho. Go ahead.
Thank you. And regarding the first incident, it's unclear as to exactly what happened and how they came to hit each other. It actually indicates in the police report that they had gone back and forth, Your Honor. So it's been testimony from the
Your Honor,
no queda claro.
One second.
No queda claro lo que sucedió en el primer incidente. El informe policial indica que ellos hablaban uno encima del otro sobre lo que sucedió. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Madam Interpreter.
Don't
I
worry.
was asked, and I may have just not been clear on what Mr. Coleman was saying, that we only discuss things that were brought out through the testimony.
Understood.
All right. Great, Counselor.
Okay, and so Your Honor, and there were no visible marks on the face of Mr. Cruz, indicating that there was a discrepancy regarding what Ms. Pellicastre actually did to him.
Entonces no había ninguna marca visible en la persona del señor Cruz para indicar que hubo alguna discrepancia sobre lo que sucedió con ella.
So the only clear markings were on the chest of both victims, and that has established that those markings happened when he choked her and she fought her off. So.
Entonces las únicas marcas claras son en el pecho de ambas víctimas. Queda establecido que cuando ella estaba tratando de quitárselo de encima.
So we would submit, Your Honor, that the charges should be dropped regarding battery to the defendant based on the testimony we heard today.
Entonces, yo digo que las acusaciones de agresión física deberían quedar retirados en agravio del señor Lara Cruz, basándonos en el testimonio aquí presentado.
Okay. All right, Counselor, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Lewis?
Thank you, Your Honor, and I'll be very brief. I just wanted to clarify, I think we were establishing that based on the 45-minute lapse between the two different allegations, I think Officer Malatea was saying that they treated them as two distinct incidents, and that in the second incident, they were able to pretty aptly determine that Mr. Cruz was the primary aggressor in that case. They did not charge Ms. Pellicastre with battery because they believed that those markings occurred after he had choked her in the second incident. However,
Entonces, yo quería clarificar que había un lapso de 45 minutos entre las dos alegaciones y la policía trataron a esos incidentes como dos incidentes separados. Quedó claro en el segundo que el señor Cruz fue el agresor principal y por eso no le pusieron cargos de agresión física contra la señora Pellicastre. Go ahead.
and thank you, Your Honor. And so I think what they were able to determine is in the first incident, because it appears that this had been an ongoing thing based on the testimony all day. Ms. Pellicastre struck Mr. Cruz initially. I think the description was a slap, and I think the officer testified that both Ms. Pellicastre Hernandez indicated that there was a slap, and Mr. Cruz indicated that there was a slap, that he was stricken in that incident. And that's not uncommon that we see cases where there's slaps and there's no injury left. That doesn't mean that there wasn't a physical contact made. It just means that there wasn't a mark left. And I think that is why the decision was made to charge her with simple battery as opposed to battery, because again, the injuries appear to be consistent.
Se determinó, se determinó que el primer incidente fue un incidente continuo durante el día, cuando la señora Pellicastre pegó al señor Cruz. Quedó determinado que fue una cachetada. Tanto la señora Hernández como el señor Cruz indicaron que fue una cachetada. Y eso no es fuera de lo común, donde hay casos donde se pegan cachetadas que no dejan ninguna marca. Pero eso no significa que no hubo ningún contacto físico. Por eso se decidió acusarle de agresión físico simple en lugar de agresión físico.
And so I would submit to the court that while Mr. Cruz's choking of Ms. Pellicastre in the second incident repugnant and defensible, the fact that he was so willing to admit to doing that, I think gives him credibility.
Entonces yo diría que como él estaba estrangulando a la señora Pellicastre Cruz en el primer incidente y él libremente lo reconoció, le da credibilidad.
Especially in light of the fact that he did not try to relate the choking to defending himself against the
Especialmente considerando que él no relacionó la estrangulación al tratar de defenderse contra ella.
And so based on the testimony provided to the court, it appears the only evidence that we have in the first instance is that Ms. Pellicastre was the first person to make physical contact.
Entonces, basándonos en el testimonio aquí presentado ante usted, señora juez, tenemos a la señora Pellicastre como la primera persona que hizo un contacto físico.
And so, Your Honor, that would just
a pesar de estar estrangulado por él.
And that would just conclude the state's argument, Your Honor.
Eso sería conclusión del argumento del Estado.
Right. So it does sound like there were two separate incidents. The first incident appeared to have begun in the living room.
Parece
And
que sí, habían dos incidentes. El primero que ocurrió en la sala,
Ms. Pellicastra agreed that she struck Mr. Cruz in
la
the living
señora,
room.
la señora Pelcastre aceptó haber pegado al señor Cruz en la sala.
And then 30 to 45 minutes later, he left the scene. He left the scene of the first altercation going into the bedroom.
Luego, a 45 minutos después, él se salió del lugar, fue a la recámara, dejó el lugar del primer incidente.
And it appears that they had a second altercation where he grabbed her by the neck and pushed her against the wall, and she defended herself and began to strike him.
Parece que tuvieron un segundo altercado donde él la agarró por el cuello, empezó a estrangularla y ella empezó a pegarle tratando de defenderse.
And the question that I had that was answered by Officer Malatia is that Mr. Laura Cruz was arrested and he was charged with the second incident because it does appear that he was the primary aggressor in that second incident.
La pregunta que yo tenía y el señor oficial contestó fue que el señor Lara Cruz quedó detenido por lo que sucedió en el segundo incidente.
And I do find enough probable cause to find that Ms. Pellicastra should have been charged with simple battery for the first contact.
Y determino que sí existe motivo fundado para que la señora Pelcastre tenga acusaciones de agresión simple por lo que sucedió en el primer incidente, como ella fue la agresora principal.
So there is probable cause for that charge of battery.
Entonces sí existe motivo fundado para esta acusación de agresión física.
Okay.
Thank you, Donna. I appreciate your time and thank you, Audrey. Good to see you.
Hey,
All right,
and
you take good care.
Coleman, thank you so much for your professionalism in reaching out in this case.
Absolutely. We'll be in contact.
Yes, sir.
All right, so I'm going to remove
Thank you for
Attorney
your
Coleman.
patience.
All right. Thank you so much.
Attorney Coleman is removed. Officer Malatia, I'm removing you as well. Have a great day. Be safe.
Thank you. You too, Judge.
All right. And Ms. Tolles, we don't need you anymore, do we?
I don't think so. Those were the only two that I knew of, Your Honor.
Okay, very, very good. Thank you so much. You have hung with us all the way through all of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Continue to be safe as well.
I'm trying. All right. You all have a great one.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, let's go through the rest of this calendar and see what we have here. Murray, let me start with Murray.
Yes, Your Honor, there are some mental health concerns. I don't know if we need to file an eval or what the court would like for me to do in that instance. I can
have some mental health concerns.
Well, yes, Your Honor. And I was going to speak to her again today to see if she was sounding the same or if it was better. I'm not sure if they've taken them away. So if you give me the opportunity, I'll speak to her for a second.
Okay. All right. You haven't had a chance to do that. We'll let you accomplish that. And Mr. Long? With Mr. Long, Andy Long, we still have the interpreter who's on the line.
Yes, Your Honor. Similar situation. That's the gentleman.
Who's talking?
Yeah, Your Honor. We do have the interpreter here. I would like a chance to meet with Mr. Long. Like I said, I've tried to schedule like 5 or so meetings with some mental health concerns. This is Attorney Graves will listen and hope.
Okay.
But I would like a chance to meet and speak with him to see where he is at today. I haven't got a chance to speak with him just yet to see if he was feeling exactly today.
Okay, that's fair enough. And then Brandon Parker.
Yes, Your Honor, I need to conference with him quickly.
Okay. And I think I have the last one, which is Isaiah Smith.
Same with him, Your Honor.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll come off the call and let all of the conferences occur. I'm also going to stop the Zoom. I can do that right now. I'm going to stop the Zoom conference, the live stream.